thank you for coming to hear our panel tonight, discussion on media, marketing, and the new and old economy. I want to just briefly introduce our panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we have Ryan Kudiger, Dan Pocrano, Margaret Rosas, Sandy Skis, and Ron Slack here tonight. I want to just give you a brief little history about where you're sitting and what's going on here. Next Space is a project Jeremy Neuner and I started about 4.5 months ago. And the idea was, I as mayor and he as the city economic development director, were sort of tired of always talking about doing economic development and not actually doing it in the city of Santa Cruz. And we saw what was an amazing collection of talent here, where we have world-class designers, world-class programmers. We have people who are finding a variety of creative ways to make it in this community, yet they're basically working in isolation. They're working out of coffee shops or out of their homes or out of offices. We also saw that we had a lot of capital in the community, but the capital tended to go over the hill and look to other places to invest. And our thought was, if we could get everyone together, if we could put people in a place where they could work collaboratively, where they could find customers and employers, partners, we could grow an economy here in Santa Cruz. And so now, 5.5 months or 4.5 months later, I can say that it's working. We have we have 24 full offices, full of companies, from architects to startup companies, clean tech companies, all working out of here. And we have in our Carroll space, we have another 10 startups going. And we have a lot of people who come and work out of the cafe space in the middle here. And we have iPhone applications. 2 of them have shipped out of this, out of the space already. We have amazing collaborations going on. We have clean tech companies that are emerging and really making a presence known not only here in Santa Cruz, but at international conferences. We have 12 Seconds getting nominated for the Startup of the Year by TechCrunch. And we believe that although it's scary times in the economy globally, we believe that this is the place to be, and this is an answer to the global crisis. And this is how we're going to come out of it, is by not just creating a space like this, but the kind of people that we have here. And how many Next Space members do we have here? Raise your hands. So by having these folks together, working collaboratively, finding ways out of this in this fantastic space, we think we're very optimistic for the future. And we wanted to, as part of it, reach out to people in the community, invite people that we respect and are doing important work, from the Cookie Company, which has been around for 25 years, 30 years? 29 years. To some of the new startups here, and make sure that we can help and support you in the best way we can to make sure that the economy continues to recover and then to flourish here in Santa Cruz. So thank you all for coming out tonight. My partner, Jeremy Neuner, who's the CEO and running this place day to day, is going to be moderating the panel. And we look forward to an informal and lively discussion about how we can use the media to grow business. So here's Jeremy.
Intro and who was going to be the moderator. And we decided the moderator has to be the guy who asks the tough questions, and Ryan, as a politician, isn't capable of doing that. So that's how I ended up being the moderator of today's panel. And I'm going to sit because I can. By the way, if you see me looking at my cell phone, it's not because I'm texting Ryan, which we sometimes do during council meetings. It's kind of fun. But because I don't have a watch on and this has a clock, because I want to keep everybody sort of like, making the trains run on time. Especially Margaret. Thanks again for coming. We're really excited about Next Space. Please ask us about it later on if you don't know about it or you want to even become a member up here. That'd be very cool. Real briefly, how many people here tonight are self-described part of the media, however you want to describe it? Some of our panelists aren't raising their hand. That's interesting. All right, thanks. Here's what I don't want to do tonight, and then I'll talk about what we do want to do. What I don't want to do is sort of get into a big, old media versus new media sort of cage match kind of thing. Instead, because I'm an anal retentive English major, I came up with sort of a thesis for the night, and I'm going to sort of throw the thesis out there and kind of use that as the theme around which we'll structure our discussion. There will be plenty of time for all of you to interact and ask questions. Because we are in Santa Cruz, I feel compelled to remind everybody that a question is a short statement relevant to the topic at hand that ends with a question mark. So as you're thinking about how you might want to interact with the panel, just keep that in mind. All right, so here's my anal retentive thesis for tonight. As old media, loosely defined as print, radio, and television, is in the midst of sort of a great sorting out as its mind share maybe erodes a little bit. And as new media, this is the blogs, YouTube, Craigslist, Twitter, Facebook, 12 seconds, social networking. It's also in the midst of a great sorting out as it starts to gain mind share. So given that as the current state of play, how do you navigate this world to build your brand and build your business? We definitely want this to be about, because this is what Nextbase is about, building your brand and building your business. So what I'd like to ask our panelists to do is to, give you about 3 or 4 minutes each to just basically introduce yourselves, say who you are, and why you're here tonight, and also provide sort of initial responses to that kind of thesis. Do I need to read it again for anybody, or you guys got it? Or all right, you guys lined up in this order. I don't know why, so we'll go in order.
Great, thanks.
Ryan Cooter.
My partner and I run a company called Cumbia. We develop web applications. We also like to think of ourselves as parallel entrepreneurs. We've got a couple of different businesses that we're working on simultaneously. One of those is a neighborhood-based business that we hope is going to really change the way the neighbors are able to interact with each other, and it's one that I'm really excited about. I'm a former Yahoo. I was laid off from Yahoo a year ago, February, so it's been just over 12 months. Since that time, I've done some consulting and kind of been out on my own. And one of the things that I think that is interesting, one of the reasons why I'm glad that Jeremy asked me to come here is that as somebody who's gone out and actually worked on starting business and starting their companies, one of the things that I've discovered is that it used to be that you needed to find other people who would talk about you, and now we're getting to a point where you've got the tools like 12 seconds and Twitter and your personal blog and things like that, where you can talk about yourself. And one of the things that we've really been doing a lot of work on is trying to figure out, how do we talk about ourselves as a business? How do we find the audience that's listening to us, and what is it that we say to them? So those are some of the experiments that we've been doing, and I think that we've, to date so far, been pretty successful with it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, I'm Dan Polcrano. I came here to go to school and wound up getting involved in the weekly newspaper revolution of the day, which at the time we thought was new media because we were taking on the dailies, papers like the Santa Cruz Independent and the Santa Cruz Weekly and others. I kind of struck out on my own and started the student guide in my senior year of college. And businesses like Ryan's family business and Larry's business were kind enough to support me, and that kind of got things going. And one of the reasons why I'm really just delighted to see your organization here is because I had to leave Santa Cruz to continue my career, so I wound up moving over the hill, But I left my heart in Santa Cruz, and I started Metro, the weekly newspaper in Silicon Valley, and I still operate that. We're one of the last publications of our type that hasn't been bought by some media conglomerate. I'm very proud of that because we've remained independent and owner-operated and dedicated to the community. And we also own the Bohemian newspaper in the North Bay, it's based in Sonoma County and distributes throughout Napa and Marin. I kind of left my heart in Santa Cruz, so when the opportunity came up and a number of people were encouraging me to start a newspaper in Santa Cruz, we started Metro Santa Cruz. And I'm very pleased to say that Metro Santa Cruz is going to be 15 years old next week. Tracy Huckel, our editor, is back there. And it's been a tremendous success. We last year we were the fastest growing newspaper in the weekly newspaper industry. It outpaced and outperformed every newspaper in our group, as well as every other newspaper in the alternative press in terms of growth rate. So it's been doing very well, and that makes me very upbeat about the state of the retail economy in Santa Cruz. I think a lot of people are coming here. I think the downturn in the economy is eventually going to be good for places like Santa Cruz because a lot of people are going to be abandoning and making lifestyle decisions that will positively impact this area because it's such a great, fabulous area to live. We've also made a number of investments in new media. 15 years ago, we started investing very early in developing city guides on the internet. We own sites like losangeles.com and seattle.com and sanfrancisco.com, as well as movietimes.com. And we've also bought up and started a number of sites in the Santa Cruz County, santacruz.com, scottsvalley.com, watsonville.com, capitola.net. And even though they're in their early stages, we see these as tremendous marketing vehicles, and we have built a bunch of tools that allow business owners to log in, update their business listings, promote their events on our 46 Bay Area sites. It's free, so if you want to promote an event, you just log in. I'll tell you how to do that later. But anyway, that's kind of our story. So kind of straddling the line between traditional media and experimenting with the media of the future.
Thanks. Margaret, next space member.
Space member. Margaret Rosas, and I run a company called Quiddities, and we're right behind this wall by the plants back there. So we have a web development shop, which basically kind of talk about building, how we started out building web pages, and we built websites, and now we build conversation platforms. So what you think of a website, we think of as a place to have a conversation with your customer. And that's exactly what social media is evolving into, as a place to have a conversation with your customer. And that conversation takes a lot of different skills. It takes a lot of different tactics that you may not have understood to be important before, and things like transparency and authenticity, I think, are really important things in today's economy and today's marketplace. So it kind of turns a few things on its head, and so I'll keep my extreme thoughts for one-on-one conversations. I say kind of extreme things.
That's why we invited you, Margaret.
That's right.
Be provocative.
So I applied for a grant from the Knight Foundation and was awarded that grant last year to build a transformative public media station software solution. So we're doing that now for KUSP, and in getting very close to being able to launch that platform. And that platform is using open source software. And that is another kind of like real passion of mine, is really open, what my Twitter profile says, open standards, open spaces, which this is very much an open space, and open source. And so those kinds of things are very important to me, and platforms that I speak about and talk about, and pretty much the new media that I see really resonates very well with those types of things. So I'll explain more of that as questions come up.
Andy, also a next space member.
And my office is over on the other side of the building, over there. So my name is Sandy Skis, and I'm the president and founder of Communications for Good, which is a public relations and branding firm that specializes in companies that are in the sustainability, clean, green tech, sort of triple bottom line. What I like to say is they're the companies of the future. And if a company isn't paying attention to those things today, they won't be around tomorrow. So that's kind of my focus. I've spent a career working with big businesses like Hewlett-Packard. I ran their global public relations account for a number of years for a large PR firm based out of New York. And I've worked for early stage startups. In the 20 plus years I've been doing this, my job is helping companies figure out who you are, what you want to say, and who you should be saying it to. So really, if there's the sort of three watchwords that I have, it's you, who, and again. The you is, who are you? What do you stand for? Authenticity is absolutely critical, and in these days I would say you've got to have a smart business story, but you've got to have soul, you've got to have a heart, and that has to be talked about in the way you present your company. So who are you? Then who? Who are you dependent on for success? It isn't the media, although the media is critically important, and public relations people are expert at helping craft stories and working with those channels of communications, but that's just one channel of communications. You have stakeholders, you have employees and shareholders and suppliers and distributors and the local community where you work, and all those people matter to whether or not you're going to succeed as a business. And making sure you're really clear about who you are, what your brand stands for, and then how you communicate it. So who you are, who you communicate to, and then I can't emphasize again and again is say it again and again and again. Because the important thing to remember is even in the days of using the media as your own channel, and the social media allows you to use a channel of communications for yourself, but if you aren't telling your story, and who you are, the media is telling their story about you. And it's a big distinction, and that's why I love the blend of traditional media and the new media, because you can use both. You can use the channel to tell your own story about yourself, and you can leverage media and influencers to tell your story with you and for you and on your behalf. So it's fun to be working in communications in spite of, and you're a hero for staying in traditional media. I applaud the folks that are sticking by it, because I think that we're going to see this sorting out. When I was listening to you talk about that, my first thought was Gryffindor. I want the sorting hat to tell me it's Gryffindor. But beside that, you're right. Sorting in the new media and the old media is happening simultaneously, and I think we'll end up with a blend that's monetized and works for the people that are publishing content, and then it helps the rest of us tell our stories in a compelling way.
Thanks. Speaking of applauding someone who's sticking it out in old media, Ron Slack?
That's right.
I'm the senior citizen here, so I'm the token traditional media person. My story is somewhat like Dan's, except for the fact that I started back in 1979 in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. And I started with a newspaper called the Los Angeles Reader, and happened to be fortunate enough to, I was a bit older when I started in the world of media, and I was actually one of those. I was probably more of a Santa Cruzan than I was a Los Angelan, in the sense that, I looked at myself as a wanderer, and I never quite knew what it was that I wanted to be and what it was that I wanted to do. And I ended up, after one of my travels, going to work for the Los Angeles Reader, and that actually started my career, and here I am almost 30 years later, and I'm still in the media. And I've been fortunate enough to work over that period of time with a number of wonderful mentors who have really taught me a lot about things that I didn't know. And I've also got to work with celebrities like Matt Groening, who actually, which I'm sure everybody knows, and Matt worked at the Los Angeles Reader, and interestingly enough, Matt was a production person, and at one point in time he was our distribution manager. And he was also madly in love with our publisher, and she left him for the associate editor. So, so I've been in newspapers for a very long time, and for the greater part of my newspaper career, I've been in the alternative press. And 8 years ago, I happened to meet up with my employer, Tony Allegretti, and I was actually given the opportunity to take over Good Times. And that was something that if I'm looking back on it now, and what it has given to me as a newspaper person and as a conduit for growth as a person, it's much more than just publishing a newspaper. And that's one of the things that I never experienced while I was working in the media up until the time that I came to Good Times, is that there's so much more that you can do. And I go back to you, and it is about, what can we give back, and what can we as a media, what do we really have to offer, and how can we use ourselves more than just the stories that we write and the advertising that we sell. And there's a whole other world, and one of the things that I have become incredibly involved in and actively involved in is the nonprofit community. And one of the things that I found as publisher is that while it's all about putting out a really good, solid newspaper, it's also using that platform to be able to develop relationships and to help other organizations expose themselves. And this is the first time in the media. I've worked at 5 newspapers. Every time, all of the other newspapers that I worked at, we were like sort of the second paper in the news in the marketplace. This is the first time that I got to become the 800-pound gorilla. And all of a sudden, we're the #1 paper in the marketplace. And the question there became to me is, so what does that mean? And what's so good about being #1? Well, nothing. except for the fact of what you actually can give back to the community and how you can participate with the community to strengthen the community and to create partnerships, not only in the advertising community and in the newspaper community, but also with other entities out there and help them grow and develop as well. And I've been extremely blessed to be a part of this Santa Cruz community over the last 8 years. And you know, while I agree that these are really, really difficult times, I also feel an incredible exuberance by the fact that we're all being really tested right now. And we're, like, what are we really made of? And I really like what President Obama said, and that was the idea about taking responsibility. And I think that, and I don't want to cast any aspersions, but I think there is something about, taking individual responsibility and carrying that to a level that goes beyond economics. And that, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Brief interlude here. To one of the things that we try to talk about here at Next Space is what amazingly, ridiculously cool, talented people are here in this town. So, pretty cool. And we'll make you an honorary Santa Cruz. Thank you. I live over there. That's right. All right. So here's how we're the sort of rules of engagement here. I'm going to ask a question of a particular panel member, give a sort of short response. Anybody else in the panel wants to chime in, that's cool. And then anybody from the audience want to chime in, short, germane, question mark. Got it? All right. So I'm going to start off by picking on Sandy. And given the fact that you are a PR professional and you talk about telling the story, I mean, media is just a tool to do that. Now that new media has given you another set of tools, basically, how do you pick the right tool for the right job? And do you have a favorite tool that's just and you can answer those in any order you want, or you can answer a completely different question.
I think I'll answer a question I wish you had have asked me.
Okay.
No, I'm
Right.
kidding. Say something completely irrelevant.
Right.
Having trained, executives how
Right.
to handle interviews, I've learned that bridge. But I will answer your question directly.
Thank you.
I think that the medium depends on the message and it depends on the company. It depends on what you're trying to do. It's the same thing as, if you're selling a food item, you probably are going to advertise on the food channel. You're probably going to find Twitterers who are talking about food. I mean, and it's very strategic thinking about where do you want the conversation to happen and who do you want to be having it. Do you need advocates? Do you need customers? Do you need people to tell your story? Do you need people to contribute content? I mean, I hate to say it depends is my answer, but it really does. And I'll tell you that what you have to know is you have to stay on top of what's going on out there. You have to know about Twitter. You have to know about blogs. You probably should have your own blog. You should be writing. You have to be a huge consumer of a wide range of information. So my favorite tools, I think are really the whole online blog community. I Twitter and I pay attention to it and I follow people and have followers. And actually I love that as a quick pulse of a group of people. If you have a question, you can kind of put it out there and get an instant answer. It's also a great way to get random news articles that I would never find myself because somebody's posted them. So I love using it for that. But I think the blogs and postings and commenting are a way for you, if you're a company representative, a company owner, a person responsible for a brand positioning, what's good about having a blog, reading blogs, and commenting on blogs is it forces you to get really clear about what it is you're trying to say. And as Margaret said, this is about having conversations. So that would be my answer to that.
Anybody else chiming in from the panel?
Can we do a quick survey? How many people keep a blog?
Yeah.
More than one?
Keep or have. Right on.
Have, yeah.
I have one.
I think there's a difference there.
How many people use
have
Twitter? How many people use an RSS reader?
Huh? Oh, sorry.
Okay. I was just curious.
All right, cool.
Find it interesting.
I'll throw something in.
Yeah.
What, it's very important to have a blog and use these tools. It's also important to market and drive people to the sites. One of the things that we work closely on, and I'm sure Ryan and others know about this, is search engine optimization, making sure that you can be found in the search engines, making sure you're linked from authority sites, and you know, making sure that you develop the partnerships so that other sites will drive traffic to you, because so many people are putting out good content but not being found. So that's one of the things we try really hard to work with.
I think one of the interesting things about that too, and one of the things that we talk a lot about with our clients is that there's an old sense of marketing which says we need to figure out ways to get people to come to us.
Right.
And I think that one of the opportunities that we have now that's never existed before is that we have the opportunity to go to them, right? If you're, you know, marketing to, you know, 25 to 35-year-olds, you know, you should be having things that they can do with you and your brand and your products on Facebook. You know, if you've got content that there are communities of people that are interested in, and you know that there's a particular place where they are, right, whether it's on a forum or whether it's on different blogs, you should be there commenting, making sure that, you know, you're constantly being visible and participatory in the places where your community are. All of those things are going to help do exactly what Dan's talking about, which is those are the types of things that are going to drive traffic back to your site ultimately. But that opportunity exists to kind of think outside of, you know, my website in terms of how I distribute my content and how I distribute my product.
Can I ask a question of everybody out here? I'm curious, have their own business. And of those people, how many of those are concentrating on the local market? And how many people here are entrepreneurs that are okay. And how many people are looking to start their own business?
Every day.
You know, it's just good to know who you're talking to and where and where, how you're looking out into the world. So thank you. That's real helpful.
We'll talk local soon. Okay. I want to pick on Margaret next. And because Margaret has a really cool project that she's working on. She talked about her thing with her project with KUSP that's being funded by the Knight Foundation. And it's taking old media and trying to drag it, perhaps kicking and screaming, and marry it up with new media. And so one of the things that you're going to have to do, I'm assuming, is you have to get some people to sort of adopt some of these new techniques and strategies that maybe don't know how to, don't want to. So I kind of want to get you to talk a little bit about how do you get people to be able to sort of seamlessly consume and use across that bridge. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, it does. And answer your question you didn't ask, just to give you some perspective
That's okay.
about the grant program. It's the News Challenge, and actually the purpose, it's a 5-year grant program, and the purpose of the grant program is basically to experiment. And so it is an experimentation program to say, what can we do that the Knight Foundation has recognized that that news models are changing, and we aren't sure what's going to work, and so they're looking to basically create a lot of experiments. So they've just, yeah, there'll be 2 more years, so if you have ideas, you'll be able to apply to. So just to give you that perspective. So back to your question. I hate this part about the panel.
Talk about whatever you want, Margaret. Don't let me stop you.
No, actually, well, so what you were talking about is getting people to adopt the tools. So this is one of the things that we've actually grappled with quite a bit in Santa Cruz with KUSP. It's like when we started this project, I think there were 2 people on Twitter. No, I'm in Santa Cruz. Now, there were probably 20. I don't know. You know, now there's probably, maybe there's 2,000. It's hard to say, but I think there's probably 40. No, I don't know, and we're all here. But I mean, it's you know, it's different than being in the Bay Area where there's more and more people on Twitter. So it's like, well, if I say Twitter in public, like they're going to be like, what? Excuse me? But I mean, I had the experience last week of being in Atlanta where the guy from CNN at iReport stood up and he said that he loves 12 seconds.
Wow. Really?
And I am on I was one of the founding team members. It was one of the projects we did a year ago, and it was the most amazing moment because I mean I'm in Atlanta, far, far away from Santa Cruz, far, far away from the bubble that I live in, and he stood up there and said, you know, we're really watching it, and so actually, stay tuned. So there's more stuff coming down the road there, and that was when I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to get over this like being afraid to say, we need to be on Twitter, we need to be on 12 seconds. I think there's a huge education that has to happen. And so we've had bar camps here, unconference events, open space events, and one of the main things that we've found that we were doing in those types of events is really training people, that we have a huge generation of people that need to learn, that what we call digital natives don't need to learn. They're people that basically are born after 1980, okay? They're pretty much glued in. Yeah, well, it's,
How many people here are born after 1980?
there we go. So
How many children who were born after 1980?
So the digital natives don't need the training, okay? They're going to get Twitter, they're going to get Facebook, they're going to get 12 seconds, and they're going to get a lot more that we could never even conceive of. But there are a lot of us born before 1980, and it's like, how are we going to get these generations of people that are used to the advertising models, the business models? What is the adoption strategy? How is it, you know, it's like, how are they going to get their news? I mean, I had this experience the other day when there was a storm warning, and I actually had like real TV on. And like a storm warning came across, and I was like, oh, what? I remember those. And I'm like, what happens in an emergency situation? How do we get alerted? You know, those are things that we're still trying to solve. So I mean, we're in a huge time of transition, and so we need a lot of education, a lot of education, and hopefully there'll be grants to go after to make that education happen.
It's not, it's related, Margaret, to something you said earlier about transparency. And with the media, there's a lot of transparency, and Sandy, you were talking about having heart and be able to deliver your promise. And it's a really different environment. If people are going to get on Facebook and start talking about their business, other people are going to be doing that as well, and they may say things in public that you don't like. And so I want you to address transparency and accountability.
Me specifically? Both. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
I think that's the world we live in today, and our country is being called and held accountable. You're absolutely right about taking responsibility. I think we're in that new era, and companies, all of you who are starting companies, need to start with that very authentic, say what's working, say what's not working. I've been doing public relations for more than 20 years, and my advice and counsel has always been, you be the one to tell your bad news. Don't let anybody else tell it for you. And frankly, the market's very forgiving of, we're all just people. These aren't just these nameless, faceless corporations. These are full of people trying hard. So I'm passionate, and that's where I'll get on my soapbox. We lack a language, what I call a language of goodness in business. We lack the permission we give each other to talk truth. And so let's just start. It's the same. Let's start doing that. Let's start Twittering. Let's be authentic. You'll take your lumps, but that's the way it works. So I'm a huge advocate, and I've had these conversations with big brands and small startups. So it's happening. It's happening.
I think you have to be transparent. I think you have to be sincere. I think you have to be real. And I think, you know, if you're being confronted, you have to deal with that. I mean, when we print something in the paper that people don't like, you know, and they call up, I feel compelled to get on the phone and have a conversation with them. Why not? I mean, what is there to be afraid of? Being honest, there's nothing to be afraid of if you're being honest. And you know, if you've lied, yeah, you've got a lot to worry about. But if you're transparent from the get-go, then I don't think that you have any kind of a problem being able to confront when someone asks you a tough question, or when someone confronts you and disagrees with you. You know, speak your mind. Be real. I think that's what it's all about. And whether it's on the editorial side or even on the advertising side or the marketing side, be real. It makes a huge difference all the way around.
Dan, do you want to jump in?
A business standpoint, to
Yeah.
be transparent about our businesses.
Yeah, and is it possible, Sandy's sort of saying, I think, that those newer media things might be an easier, faster, cheaper way?
Certainly faster. I don't know that they're any easier.
Okay.
So you're saying when we have a bad month or something bad happens this year, we put out a press release?
I think if your constituents are wanting that kind of information, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm being semi-facetious.
Yeah,
You
but
know, the weird thing is, because we're not a publicly held company or
Yeah,
something,
you
the
don't
world
have to-
really doesn't care, you know.
Right.
A couple of my investors might care if we if our business isn't
And
doing
you tell
well.
them, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But the world really doesn't care about the fortunes of a privately held business. But in terms of accountability for our process, I think Ron touched upon it. You know, I believe that, you know, we're an owner-operated business, that, you know, we're not owned by some media conglomerate, like most of the media these days. I'm out here in the community, you know, and people see me all the time, whether it's at a service club or a social event or, you know, entertainment events. I encourage our staff to get out there. We pick up our phones, we respond to emails. Anybody who wants to email me, dp@metronews.com or dp@metcruise.com, you know, I'll answer the email. And we want to hear what you think about the newspaper. You know, there was an advertiser here at Metro Santa Cruz who was angry because he didn't get a response, like he thought he was going to get or something, or his ad didn't come out right. He got me on the phone, and, you know, I dealt with the problem. And so I think newspapers have to be accountable, and the new media is not quite as accountable. I mean, try very often finding a phone number of some website. Try getting someone from Twitter on the phone. You cannot. You fill out a web form and you might get a response. So it's very different in terms of levels of accountability. Your former employer, by the way, we did a deal. We did a deal with Yahoo when it was a tiny company back when Jerry Yang was running it himself the first time, and we swapped some advertising space and stuff. And I still have not been able to get the person on the phone, you know, 10 years later to redeem it. You know, so it's like, how do we use our part of the advertising when we helped you guys out when you were a tiny company and came to us, the newspaper?
That's tenacity.
So this is a great segue actually to, you're next, you're on. Finally.
I've been sitting here for an hour.
The idea that it is hard to have that human interaction. So this is one of my personal big sorts of things about social media, is that just because you're my friend on Facebook doesn't necessarily mean you're actually my friend, right? So how do we bring the social online media where I might be friends with somebody someplace else, or I might read a newspaper article about somebody and somehow feel this great connection to them, but not have an actual personal, physical connection. And Ryan, the reason I want to say this question for you is because you are thinking about social media in a very hyper local way with Neighborsville. So I want to get you guys to talk a little bit about where the online social media interacts with actual social interaction.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking when we were listening to all these conversations is, you know, a lot of it was, you know, like crisis management and things like that, or customer service and things. And one of the things that I think is important to recognize is that human behavior changes very, very slowly. The tools that we have available to us to express those behaviors change very, very quickly, right? People have always, for centuries and centuries, been bitching and moaning about bad service or a product that didn't work, or how their pizza showed up cold, or whatever it was. And it just so happens that a few years ago, you know, they would talk about it, you know, the following weekend when they were at a cocktail party. And now they Twitter about it, going, you know, the damn pizza's 45 minutes late, and they're already complaining to large audiences of people before the event has actually even happened. The behavior, though, is exactly the same. You know, so when you ask the question about, you know, social networks and friends and not friends and things like that, you know, it's the exact same thing that we've got going on in this room right now. We're all sitting here having a conversation. We're interested in the things that each other are talking about, you know, with the exception of Margaret. I haven't met any of you guys before tonight. You know, we've got some flip cams out in the audience, which means that later this is probably going to be on YouTube or something, which means that there's going to be a whole new group of strangers. So there's going to be this whole new group of strangers that are leaving comments and, you know, talking about what dorks we are. And so what's happened, though, is that it's all exactly the same thing. Instead of, you know, busting out the flip cam, you know, before you would go home and you would tell, you know, 2 or 3 of your friends, or you would send out an email to a few people who you used to have business relationships with. And so the behaviors don't change. The tools that we have available, the Twitters and the YouTubes and all this stuff, grease those communication channels. What we have as business owners to our advantage is that we can watch those channels. We can't sit around and listen to every conversation that somebody has in a coffee shop the day after we do a poor job delivering their pizza. But we can definitely track our name on Twitter and find out when somebody's complaining about it. There's a guy named Frank who is Comcast Cares. Has anybody heard of Frank?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Frank sits there. My Comcast went out today, as a matter of fact, and I didn't talk to Frank about it, but the last time it happened, I sent Frank a note, and I said, Frank, what's going on? He said, we can help, send an email to these people, send an email to him. I said, Frank told me to call. Within the hour, my Comcast situation was taken care of. And rather than just sitting and bitching and moaning to my wife, I bitched and moaned in public to a much, much larger audience, although my wife does talk quite a bit. And I had my situation resolved quickly, and it's those types of opportunities. So back to your question, which is, how do we deal with these things? The same way you always have, which is that when you hear things that are going on about your business, you step in and you join the conversation. We just have tools now that make it that much easier for us to join that conversation. That's the only difference.
That's the best answer to that question I've ever heard.
That was a good burrito.
Thoughts, reactions, questions? You had one behind you, sir.
Actually, I'm Bruce. I just wanted to ask, and it's sort of along the same lines of what you were talking about, responsibility and accountability. Because new media can have such a quick change and it can reach a lot of people, bad news or wrong news can get out, it can get corrected. But you can really help a crisis, you can help a recession turn into a depression. Do we have the responsibility, or could we have the responsibility to help it, get better by coming up with solutions and really kind of nudging each other along to make it, have a better positive attitude?
I'd love to answer that. I say yes. I was watching, was on regular TV and watching CNN, and one, the stabbing and a beheading and I'm like, why are we tracking random acts of violence incessantly instead of random acts of kindness, at least also? So I would agree with you. I think the narratives that we choose to spread in the marketplace are a choice. And I am not in any way suggesting that we should stop paying attention to the tough stuff, and or that we should. But I am also not saying, I'm not saying that we have to reveal every negative dimension of a business. No, but I think it would be interesting to start paying attention to the positive things in the world, and I do think that will help create an uplift in the economy.
I'd also just to add to that is that two words that I think are compelling words right now is our attention. So what we put our attention on. Oftentimes, because media has kind of been about like, we're gonna take whatever ad you shove at us, but now we kind of get to choose where we place our attention. So that's a really big thing to think about when you've got a business. It's like, how am I gonna get someone's attention? And then also filters, that really what we're looking for are filters, because now there's so much information that we can expose ourselves to. And so that's, I think, where we are going to see this blend with old media and new media, is that we do still need filters because there's so much to be absorbed. But that's also where we can use our social networks. We can use Twitter to be our filter, or we can use Facebook and watch people's streams to get our news. And so those are filter choices. So really thinking about where we place our attention and what filters we're using, I think those are two kind of concepts that are pretty key right now.
More questions? Steve?
Addressing what Ryan said, I thought that was very, a very succinct and very broad, but very accurate way of defining things, or breaking things down. I wanted to follow up with the question. I totally agree. Human behavior changes very slowly. The tools that we use to build houses, to build structures, to do anything, that changes quite rapidly. But what about expectations? Our behavior doesn't change rapidly, but what about expectations?
Expectations do change, and I think what happens is that as transparency naturally increases as a result of the tools, right? There's broad exposure, right? I send out a tweet on Twitter, and I've got something like 2,200 people who know that I'm sitting here at Next Space tonight. All of a sudden, and as such, whether we're a business or a person or a brand, what's come to happen is that people feel a sense of entitlement to information, right? And I think that that's what's changed about it. And it's because idiots like me have been more forthcoming with information, right? You get these whole generations of people that are going out now and saying, you know, I'm eating breakfast, or, you know, I'm meeting with a client, or, hey, we just solved a really difficult problem that we'd like you to go to our blog to read about. And so the concept of expectation, I think, changes along with the tools, because if you were to go back 100 years and say, I'd like for you to build me a house, you know, they'd get the guy out there with the lathe, and they've had, you know, the people in the overalls with the two-hand saws. You know, now you call up the house factory, and Ty shows up and builds you a mansion in a week, right? And so, just as anything else, communication channels, construction, microchips, you know, whatever it happens to be, as that technology advances, we expect that the behaviors that accompany those are going to be changing along with them. And so, I think that you're absolutely right on. Expectations have increased. We have a greater ability to respond to those expectations. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have expected somebody from my cable company to answer my response in an hour, because they couldn't, right? Now they can. And so because they can, I expect them to, and so I think that puts a little bit of an onus on us as business owners, that our customers do have increased expectations from both a service perspective, from a communications perspective, and from, you know, a quality of product perspective.
Well, I just want to say, you know, when we're talking about expectations, I think you hit on a really good point. Part of the, I think the discussion here tonight is about marketing your business. And one of the things that I see, I've been helping people market their business for 30 years now, and I've seen businesses do a really bad job at it. I've seen businesses do a really good job at it. But the interesting thing about it is it's not about how a business, well, there's a part of it is about how a business markets itself, but really more important, it's about what is that business about, and is that business relevant to the community that it's catering to, and does it have something to really offer? Because if you're looking for the marketing and the advertising, you know, and the communications that you have out there to make your business a success, then you're starting from the wrong platform to begin with. You know, your business has to have something that people want, and it, you know, and then once you know that you have something that people want, then you have to figure out how you're going to get that message out to people in a way that they're going to want to hear it. And one thing I will say that David Ogilvy said something that has stuck with me for a really, really long time. And I recite this religiously to new people who are talking about their business. And it's the more impressions that you make, the more opportunities that you have. And it's a really, really simple fact of life. And so when you're looking, you know, once you've got that solid business plan, and once you've made that commitment to what it is that you're going to do with your business, then you really have to think about, where am I going to make, you know, first of all, what is my image going to be? And then where am I going to make the greatest impact in the marketplace that I'm trying to develop? And I think that's critical, you know. So when we're talking, and to me, this does deal a lot with expectations. Because when you put your message out there into the marketplace, you know, the people that are getting that message, they have expectations of what, you know, you're offering based on this message and this design that you're putting together for them. And if you don't deliver that, you know, it can go away very quickly. And I'll give you one local example of a business that really marketed themselves well, and they went down so fast, I couldn't believe it. And they had a really good game plan. It was a place called the Red Lantern. And if the owner's here, I apologize for any. But, you know, they came out really early marketing themselves. They did a big campaign before they opened. They had full page ads out there. You know, you went in there like the first month or so, and that business was, and that was Old India Joe's, and that's a hard place to fill, because it's a huge space. And they looked like they were just, you know, destined for success. But you know what? Their business wasn't good. They didn't serve good food necessarily. They didn't give good service. And all of that money that they put into marketing, all of that money, you know, to get people excited about their business, they didn't deliver. You know, so there were these expectations, and the expectations fell flat. So, you know, there's expectations for you.
So we'll get to you. I'll pick on Dan a little bit to you're in an interesting spot because you are, again, trying to straddle the old and the new. You've got a couple of print newspapers, weeklies, but also with boulevards and all of your websites. How talk a little bit about what you're doing with those and how you see how it's moving forward for you, but also talk a little bit about. I want to know if I come to you and say, hey, I want to advertise, I want to get my name out there, I want to use these channels. You know, what are you going to try to sell me? What's the outlet that you think is going to be the one that you're going to be sort of pushing the most?
Well, one thing is, you know, we have a huge number of impressions, and for the ability of local businesses to brand themselves, we offer that. We offer search engine optimization because our sites are very strong and they're authority sites in their markets. We can help capture search engine traffic to a business page on our site, as well as direct that traffic to the website of the business. Another thing we specialize in is in commerce conversion, writing copy in a way, structuring a page in a way extremely simple to create a sale. We, for example, market a lot of hotel rooms in Santa Cruz and restaurants in Santa Cruz, and get people straight to the phone number. Our job is to get people from the web to pick up the phone and contact the business, or to place a reservation online with the business, or buy a movie ticket through our sites. We're still, and we've been doing a pretty good job of that, but given our traffic levels, our revenues should be huge. We're a top 500 internet company. Quantcast rates boulevards, I think it was 350, about 350 as of today. So we're one of the biggest companies on the web right now, but that's in traffic, not in revenue. So we're still trying to figure out how to properly monetize that traffic, because we should be one of the hugest companies on the web in terms of revenue as well. The local space we're finding is very difficult for media companies to monetize. A lot of the discussion I hear tonight is about how to get yourself promoted for free. Because there's so many free avenues to do it, and everybody should be maximizing it. You should be getting people to write about you, you should be getting PR, and taking advantage of grants and all this, but how are we gonna get this, turn this into a business so that professional writers and reporters can be paid, and marketers and illustrators and photographers can actually make money at this, make livings at it. So we're trying to convert this amount of traffic. We get 4 million people a month coming to our sites. We have 10 million page views. That's a huge number. That's 20 million advertising avails if you have two ads per page, and we have a lot more than that. So we've got this huge inventory. We're trying to figure out how to make this work for businesses like yours, and we've developed a number of models. We've developed real estate transactional models where we found that real estate people wouldn't pay to be on our sites. So we said, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll share the commission with you. They said, you can't do that. That's illegal under the Business and Professions Code, because you have to be a realtor to share in a commission event. We can't commission media. So we said, okay, we'll become a real estate firm. So we incorporated as a California real estate firm, and we registered with the Department of Real Estate. We've never sold a house or participated in a transaction or hung a sign, but we're getting commissions now because we'll send the business to the realtor, and the realtor will pay us part of the commission for generating a lead for them. And we do this with hotels. We're an IATA certified travel agency, so we can now collect commissions on hotel transactions. We can book a tour of Alcatraz in San Francisco and make a little money that way. And if you buy a movie ticket across the street through our site, movietimes.com, I think we get a quarter. And if you book a restaurant reservation through OpenTable, I think we get another quarter, stuff like that. It's starting to add up.
You're bursting.
Dan and I have like a soft spot for it.
Can I just clarify something, because you're talking, you know what you're talking about. You're talking about this
Boulevard site.
Boulevard. Is this
What you talking about?
Are you
Online
talking about
business?
all of these sites? The Metro, are you talking about one site?
This is our network.
Okay.
What Quantcast has done is that now Quantcast is like Alexa. or compete.com, except Quantcast has done something very interesting, which they aggregate network statistics. So they'll take, we have about 200 sites. Our biggest site is movietimes.com, which is basically people looking up movie times. Just like it sounds. Another big site, our huge site we have is losangeles.com. Metroactive.com is another big site. In San Francisco, we have a arts and entertainment site called sfstation.com.
So this is an aggregation of sites.
Aggregation, yeah. SantaCruz.com, Carmel.com, et cetera, et cetera.
WillowGlen.com?
WillowGlen.com, that's right. Thanks for reminding
No
me.
problem. You do?
That's his home neighborhood.
He ranks above me on the Google searches.
Listen, we can work together.
I know. See?
Do you sell the ads on all of these sites? Are you are you direct advertising contact? Are you
Yes.
getting it from somebody else?
Yes, people can, buy a spot on our front page. They can buy a page on our site. Also, we play with the ranks. Like, for example, if you're a restaurant and you want to be at the top of the listing page, you can buy that position.
All right, Ryan. Yes. So, no. This is. I think that you're right. Advertising, and that was the solution. That was the only solution that we had available to us through the print media forever, right? The other thing would be to do what Sandy does and try to convince you guys to write an article about me, which is very, very difficult. How many people in this room who own their own business have ever bought an online display ad? How many people in this room have ever bought a search term on Google or Yahoo?
Wait, people are lying. Larry's bought some ads.
So what we're seeing is that small businesses. How many people have bought a Yellow Pages ad? Okay. Ooh. How many people have bought a newspaper ad?
I bought an ad on the Good Time.
Right? Which is excellent. But what happens is
Thank you. There we go. I like that play. Yeah.
Just trying to throw a boner on.
Yeah.
Every business has two basic marketing challenges, and those challenges are new customer acquisition and engagement and retention of my existing customers, right? Display ads and search ads and things like that are very, very good for new customer acquisition, right? But everybody knows, if you run a business, that it is cheaper to retain and create a multiple-time customer than it is to go out and acquire a new customer. And what we're seeing with the rise of blogs and Twitter and a lot of the social media that happens is that it gives us as business owners the ability to go out and create direct one-to-one relationships where we're talking back and forth. The same way as if you had a storefront 15 years ago, the way to create a relationship is that when somebody comes into your store, you engage them, you call them by name, you say, hey, you say, how's it doing? How was the last time you shopped here? You shake their hand, you say, thanks for coming, you sell them something else, and you look forward to seeing them next week. So that restaurants have operated, coffee shops, pizza places, clothing stores, any kind of retailer, anybody who sets up a storefront. And what the web allows us to do is it allows us to set up a storefront where we can have those exact same kinds of interactions with our customers. I've got a little website, Koombia.com, Koombea.com, and we've got a little blog where we post things like, my partner down in Colombia kicking a cockroach out of the room the other day on video. It was really cool. We also write about things like, our approach to how small businesses should be starting up, release early, release often. And people can come in and they can comment on those things and we can talk back to them. And I get 70 some odd people, which is not a huge number. We're not a top 350 media property. But I've got 70 people who are interested in what I'm selling, stopping by my storefront every day. Now imagine that you had a shop right down here in downtown Santa Cruz and you had 70 people who are interested in what you were selling, stopping in every day. That affords you a fantastic opportunity, not only to make new sales, but also to keep those people up to date on what it is that you're doing. And I think one of the challenges that we have as media is saying, understanding that human behavior changes very, very slowly. How do we feel the needs that you guys have as businesses to get new customers? How many people here, the number one source of new business for them is word of mouth referrals from existing customers? How many people have ever shared an online internet ad with a friend? Right, and there's like 3 or something like that. How many people have ever shared a blog post or something interesting that they found on the internet with a friend? I'm done.
Well, and I want to just add to that, because I think what's important is every one of those 70 visitors is there not necessarily for a sale or a transaction.
Right.
And I think that's, as a public relations person, it's about informing, engaging, persuading, creating the connection, providing more information, so that every impression you can't expect that every impression leads to a transaction and a sale.
Mhm.
That's not the only thing you need to do with your customers. You do need to inform them and engage them, and you're right, that provides you an online storefront to do
Yeah,
that.
you know, it's interesting because, you know, I'm coming from a completely different perspective, being an old newspaper guy,
Yeah.
and having been very successful and having a newspaper that's very successful in getting out a message and having an audience that responds very much to that message. And at the same time, you know, we've begun to make that transition to the internet. I have a little problem with new media, old media. I think it's just media. You know, get over the fact that we're new or old. We're media, and it's how do you use the media, and how do you gain that particular edge. But I'll give you just a quick story of how we've begun to use the media effectively, and I'm sure Dan is doing this at his paper. 2 years ago, we decided we do the best of every year, and it's, you know, and our best of issue is our biggest issue of the year. Two years ago, we decided that it is so cumbersome. Because, first of all, it's 2 pages that we have to devote to the paper of putting out the ballot. That's one thing. Then we have to read everybody's bad handwriting. then we have to throw away all of those duplications and people that have been trying to stuff ballots out of things. And you know, and we would actually spend somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks counting the ballots. What a waste of time. But it's not, because on the other side of it is, people in the community really want this. They really get excited about it. So 2 years ago, we made a quantum leap and said, you know, let's see what happens if we use new media. And we put the ballot online, okay? So the first year that we did it with, part of it was in the paper and then some online. And we got about 600 people to respond online to it, which we went, yay, yeah, that's really good. You know, 600 people actually went online and filled out the ballot. Last year, we got about 1,400 people. This year, we've got over 2,000 people who have taken the time to fill out the ballots, and we're still counting because it's not over yet. So, you know, you can work with the media together. Like we have advertisers now, for example, that use both the newspaper and also use the website with banner ads. And we can track all that. And the nice thing about it is that they're, you know, talking about transparency again. We can tell our customers how many click-throughs that they had, which is, you know, really relevant to them, because it's the same way as you said. That's 70 people that you know that went, you know, that walked into your store. So it's not about, you know, like using one over the other. It's about figuring out ways to incorporate it, and it's also figuring out who, you know, who am I getting my message to, and am I getting it to the same people on a consistent basis? Because part of building your brand is not reaching a bunch of people randomly, 1 week here, 1 week there. That's one of the problems with cable television. You know, I hate to say it, is you never, you know, I mean, I've seen ads, you know, for the strangest things at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and you're going, why did people even spend money on this? And I've seen ads that are so unrelated that, you know, it's an ad that has to do with women, and it's on a, you know, an all-male sports station. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And one of the relevancies of print to this day still, I'm going back to print here, is the fact that we have an audience that is still very, very viable, that picks up and uses our publications every single week. To, you know, we have an interaction already going with those people. You know, they're already looking forward to the day that the paper comes out to get information about how they're going to plan their week. And it revolves around, and the stories that they get to read, the information, the education that we give them in the stories that we write. So until, and this is where I sort of differ with, you know, going from, you know, like where the new media has not yet been able, I think, to develop a strength, and that is being able to capture an audience over a long period of time so that you create that real communications that goes on an ongoing basis, and so that you get that repetition so that people really know who you are. It's great to get somebody's attention for 5 minutes, but if it fades away, it's not of a lot of use except for that 5 minutes. And that's why I think old media still has a place in this world at this time.
I want to bring Margaret back into the conversation because you said much things. You think she's there. See, this is what happened. Margaret thinks a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of things.
So,
I
I was going to ask you a question, but if
yeah,
you just
why
want,
don't you know?
but if you just want to talk, that's okay too.
Okay.
Do you want me, I can ask a question.
Ask a question.
Okay,
Yeah,
here's-
actually, yeah.
Here's a question. Yes, yeah, I do have a question mark at the end.
Short and concise.
Yes, thank you.
Never mind, audience.
Take my own advice. Touche. Because you can put so much information out about you, your brand, your product, in all these different channels. That one of the things that PR professionals will talk about is keeping control of the message, right? But if these things can go viral, so to speak, and go viral to great effect, i.e. something really cool about me gets out on Twitter and Facebook and email and gets forwarded, re-forwarded, but that can also happen sort of in a bad way too, when information, how do you manage that, I guess, is my question.
How do you put the
'Cause
genie back in the bottle?
yeah, because you and I have talked a little bit about this in the past, about how reputation management, how brand management needs to be very carefully done online, as opposed to using print media or something else. So.
Well, so one of the things about reputation management in particular is that you want to make sure that that you're putting more information out about you that's good. It might be information that's bad. So, I mean, that's one way to fight any kind of thing, because, I mean, with Google in particular, I mean, content is king. And Twitter too, for anything. It's like, and so, you know, if there's information out there that's not bad, then the first thing, that is bad, the first thing you would want to do is to go out there and correct the story. And that's something that you can do very much with your own media. I mean, the thing to me is that I think that we are in a time of transition, and that 20 years from now, the conversations are going to be vastly different. And what the habits that people have with print right now, we're going to look back and reflect on that and go, wow, remember that. So, I mean, it is going to change. We know that it's going to change. And so we still have people, I do get the Sentinel at my house. You know, I don't know. It's like, that means I pay for it each month. So,
if the website was effective, then you probably wouldn't.
yeah, no, not going to go there. But you know, so I do get it for scanning headlines, but I mean, I'm 40. You know, it's like, so I still have print habits, but I mean, we aren't teaching our young children to read newspapers in the way that we were taught to read a newspaper. Like, it was kind of like a thing you did. I mean, and the thing, just to kind of piggyback on something that Ryan was talking about with behaviors and things, is that even though behaviors can take a long time, they don't change, is what you're saying. They don't change. The thing to think about is that if we think about the telephone and how long telephones evolved, telephone etiquette evolved over those 10s, 20s, 30 years, right? So it's like, when the phone rings, you pick it up and you say hello, and this is what, you know, and you don't give out your name, and so we teach those behaviors. What behaviors are we teaching now? We don't even know. We're like, oh, my kid's on Facebook. We don't. There's so much that we don't. My mother didn't teach me, that I'm not able to teach my children. That we're all learning together very quickly, and so we're kind of in a big mess.
Peer education.
Yeah. So I don't know where that's
good.
going. So,
Right.
but I mean, but I do think that that we have a lot of things to figure out, and that the print is evolving. What it's evolving to, I think, does kind of need to be a blend, because we need filters and attention. I mean, when it comes back to attention, it's harder. And so print media, yes, you can get the impressions week after week, and so you know that ad for camouflage is always on the same page, or that it's always kind of, you know, and so that you do get those impressions. And so with new media, how do you get those same kinds of impressions? Well, what kind of conversation are you in? Where are you trying to meet your customer? And maybe you're developing communities of interest where you're combining similar brands. So, you know, if it's about sustainability, that you've got, you know, partnerships with multiple brands. So I think there's just a lot of diversification now.
We have some vehement hand raisers
yes.
out here, so I'm going to
Okay.
Amy and then Gloria.
And Brayden, and then behind you.
Oh, right, sorry, yes. Amy.
Well, the thing I'd like to point out is the whole word of mouth, and I find it fascinating, just what's going on the Geeks list, that it's gone to where to get the best haircut, who's got a mechanic, and this word of mouth that you don't get in newspapers with the ads. And the evangelists, I think about people going through social media and finding your product and searching for it and finding those evangelists that are talking about your product. load them up with products and then see what they say, and then see the contests that happen around people that are like, well, I want free products too. I think I'm going to start saying nice things, and see what what happens with that. But the whole word of mouth thing, we've never had the power we have now to connect. And that's what new media is doing, and the old media too needs to adapt, and those people that are using the old media have to find a way to get to that word of mouth, because it becomes, I can read those ads, but I know they're crafted. Whereas if I can go to someone I know, I'm getting an authentic view of, I think, at least for me, my perception is that it's an authentic recommendation from someone.
I love you, but you just violated the question.
And anyway, my question is,
You blew it.
as print media, because I love print media, and it's very sad to think about it going away, but I feel like that is what's happening. How do you counteract that? How can you adapt, and how can you participate in that?
That's a good question.
Because I even question your best of, I have to tell you, and I'm sorry to say this, but I feel like how authentic is that? I think
If you
people.
knew how much work we put into that, you would not question it. But we get questioned all the time. We get people telling us that we only pick people that are advertisers, but
Right.
those are people that never really look at all of the winners and see how many of those are not advertisers.
Because it seems like the advertisers are the winners.
Well, it may, but believe me, it is, and I'm sure Dan, because Dan does the best of as well. They're as authentic as we can make them, and as with human, if you put a little bit of human error in there. But our goal, talking about transparency, I would welcome anybody to come into our office at any time and go through our results with us and see how we tabulate that. I mean, it's that simple. It really is the readers out there telling us what it is that they like.
And it's amazing the concordance between the people who advertise and the people who win. And it's not because the newspaper. I'll defend Ron on this. It's not because people are sitting there, throwing away the ballots of people who aren't advertising, or adding a couple hash marks on the tally sheets. It's because the people who are advertising in the newspaper are the ones who people remember. When you have to think of best pizza parlor, and Pizza My Heart is, what's your pizza parlor?
I started Pizza.
Okay, good place. I remember when you first opened down there in Capitola and stuff, and what was it? A West was doing the cartoons, right? See, I remember his advertising. I remember the name of the guy who was drawing his advertising. There was great, the Duck Brothers cartoons. So that's the power of advertising. And when a place has to come to the top of your mind, you think of it. Okay, it's Pizza My Heart. Because. Some people know that it's the best pizza, but then there's 100 others who think it's the best pizza because it's the only place they can remember. And then I also want to challenge your survey here, Ryan, because you asked people how many people responded to an internet ad, and I think that probably people don't even remember that they're passing it on.
What I asked was how many people have forwarded an internet ad onto somebody else.
But I think they are, because it depends. Maybe not that little Google search ad or a tile ad, but let's say web pages. I mean, you print out a web page from Pottery Barn or something, and say, here, this is the chandelier I want, or this is a sofa that would look good in your living room, or this is the ring I want, or this is the hotel I think we should stay at on our vacation. You're always forwarding the stuff. I mean, am I right? You guys pass that stuff on, right? I'm not the only one.
But you forgot the better counter to him, which is how many people clipped out the magazine, the newspaper article that mentioned their name.
How many requested extra copies of that issue?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's the context. Most people don't forward display ads. Most people are forwarding something that's contextual, that has to do with somebody referring something, this is where I went, it was embedded in a story, that kind of thing.
But those are ads, those web pages.
Well, those are
the merchandise.
I just want to say the thing they're forwarding are the YouTube videos of
Right.
Verizon doing really amazing kinds of marketing tactics. I mean, so that's what gets forwarded, and that's an ad, absolutely. But it's done in a way that's very
Snickers
different.
commercials.
But if I understand your question, do people that run businesses find a way of authenticating themselves in print, right? And that I don't think we actually quite got to answering in some way. That is a really difficult thing, because an ad is an ad. And you know, there's very few ways that you can have talking heads in ads. We have a program that we do 4 times a year, which is profiles, where businesses act, and that is about as close in print that we can actually get. And what that really does is that's just a business person talking about themselves, telling us about maybe their background, why they got started in the business, and why their business. And so that's really is coming from them. So, but that's still not as personal as somebody, you know, talking to you directly. And I don't think print, unless we use the new media, unless we use the internet and take our customers to the internet and allow them to tell their stories on the internet, that might be a way to do it.
Gloria's been waiting a really long time.
Yeah, I'm going to do an inverted pyramid on you guys. I'm going to ask the question first, and then I'm going to give some of the thoughts I have and why I'm asking the question, so we don't go on and say, where's my question? So my question is going to be, instead of talking about what isn't, what is? What are some of the similarities and what is between print, you know, and the transition now that we're making? What's the commonality, you know, going to social media? And I'll raise some of the issues I see. For instance, Facebook. Regarding your question, but regarding your statement about telephones, you know, and things like this, I disagree. I think that there's huge amounts of cultural discussions about what you're supposed to do on Facebook, and not including what Facebook originally just did a few weeks ago, which is they claim they own all your, they're copywriting every picture you stick on there. It's theirs, it's their property. And I have discussions with my son, and my son has discussions with his friends about what's appropriate. They know that they're going to be tracked now, okay? And that if they posted something 25 years ago, and they were naked having lollipops in a rave party, it's going to come to haunt them if they want to apply for principal of so-and-so high school, right? So these kinds of discussions do occur, and they are evolving. That's one thing. The second thing is print is going out of business. That's a fact. And we need to deal with that. You give a free paper away. That is a different, and that's the same as how I read the New York Times. Look, the Rocky Mountain News just announced today, right? 100-some-year-old paper, out of business. Going out of business, everybody's being laid off.
Daily model is dead. The daily model has been dead for years. And
Not just the daily model. I worked for the Herald Examiner when I was a kid, so I know what it means for a paper to go out of business and the negotiations that happen between morning papers and evening papers. In other words, there's similarities. Okay?
So do you want to let him answer your question?
No, so the last part is, because I'm going to answer it, is has to do with the transition. What are the similarities, and how are we going to address those? Because I think the concept of refereeing, and this is the other point that I wanted to speak to, is about refereeing. I mean, when people have chosen newspapers over a period of time, certain newspapers have existed and certain newspapers have gone away. And it's based on who owns them, what the content is, what the market's like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's also happening on the web. I mean, we've got people who are establishing their brand on the web. There's Politico.com. There's the Huffington Post. There's right-wing conservative newspapers. There's people in technology like Scovelizer. There's young entrepreneurial kids like Daniel Brzezinski, who's now a speaker. Thank you. He's a brilliant kid. And he's a terrific entrepreneur and a wonderful person. And his parents are absolutely brilliant. And you see these kinds of new talents emerging. You know, and it's a very exciting time to be a part of this. So
I'm going to give it back to the panel,
so that's the
Gloria.
question. Why is it exciting?
Give it back.
Yeah.
Well, I'm you know, what's similar is that it's about getting information out. It is about getting information out to people that is relevant to their day-to-day lives. That our paper's about that. You know, we can do the same thing on the internet. Okay. Have we reached as many people as we're reaching in print at this point in time? No, not at all. And I agree with you. I mean, print. I don't know if I agree with you that print is dying. It's definitely changing. It's going through a transition. I would say in the next 10 years, that we're going to see 25 to 30% of newspapers. I would say mostly dailies that are going to begin to disappear. I think the weeklies are a little bit different, but they're probably at some point in time as maybe an, you know, and I'm not sure if they're going to go away. You know, we thought that when television came into existence, radio was going to go away. I think what we have now is we have another platform. We have another way of getting out information. It's not nirvana, And in many ways, it's a hell of a lot more competitive than print is, because you just pointed out yourself, there's so many. And part of that is in some ways a little bit overwhelming as well. You know, where do I spend my time? And you know, we're creating all these attention deficit disorder people because, you know, we're all blah, 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 blahing all over the place. You know, we can't, you know, it's harder and harder to focus. We can't even read a column of a newspaper anymore because it's too much time. So while it is definitely changing, I don't think that our model is dead yet. And I'm certainly not, and I don't think Dan might be, because the last time we were at a thing, he said newspapers were dead, so at a newspaper conference, so maybe we think differently.
I said online newspapers suck.
Well,
The
you know,
New York Times is online, and it certainly doesn't suck. I enjoy it.
What's that?
Online. I enjoy New York Times online. I read it every day. So
when we stop becoming relevant, then we'll stop being.
I feel like Helen at the.
Here's what I want to do. I want to ask give two more, and then I want to give some time for us to sort of just mingle and grab a beer, talk amongst ourselves, kind of thing. Is that cool with everybody?
Sure.
You guys haven't said enough. You said too much. Oh, well, okay.
Yes.
I'm co-owner, I get to ask questions.
All right, fine.
So, I mean, my question is especially for the new media folks, which is you got people like Dave Schumann, who's a vet, right? He has to spend his whole day fixing dogs and cats. He creates a Facebook page, and he could, let's say in a generous day, he could do 10, 15 minutes on Facebook time responding to people. 9 out of 10 people who go on his Facebook page and want to email him are going to be people who waste his time. Right? Are going to be people who have too much time and do it. Some student of mine created a Wikipedia page for me because I thought I was somehow important. They create a Wikipedia page, some guy goes on there and puts all this false information. I now have a UCSC intern who every day changes my Wikipedia page, and then every day some other guy changes it back, and then I change it. And I've emailed Wikipedia saying, look, I'm not that important, please just take it down. Like, because I don't have the time or energy or effort to spend my time in you know, responding in these forums. And
Is there a question, Mr.
Yes.
We're going to deface your Wikipedia.
Right. Yeah. So for the businesses here who are not social media, they're just regular businesses, if they can only donate, if they can only spend 5-10 minutes of their day responding to things, should they bother creating a forum which will raise expectations for what they can do?
There are lots of different levels of involvement, and every business is different, right? And you know, if we go back to some of the things that we talked about earlier, right? Imagine 15 years ago, before we had the internet, right? What would you do? Right? What would you do 10 or 15 years ago? You might write up a newsletter and once a month send it out via mail to all of your customers, right? So now let's take that behavior and move it to 2009, right? Once a week I write a blog post about an interesting veterinary topic or some operation that I did on a dog this week, right? Or I do a pet of the week or a pet owner of the week, or I'm gonna have to spend some amount of time marketing my business in some way. The key thing for small businesses, right? Businesses like mine, businesses like a lot of yours, is that our business comes from other people sharing their successful stories about our business or introducing us to other folks. I think that the key to small business marketing is giving your fans something to share, right? The best way to do that is to talk about yourself in a positive way, right? And allow them to share that with folks. If I'm the vet, what I would do is I would start a vet blog. I would put up cute pictures of dogs, and I would write about a dog of the week, and then I would tell the owner, hey, you're my dog of the week. Please share this with all of your friends. Let them go post my post on Facebook. Let them email my post to all of their neighbors in the neighborhood. Right? What I'm doing is I'm giving people the means to talk about me for me. And it takes me 15 minutes a week.
That was sort of the tenet of our experiment.
That was the what?
It kind of became the tenet for us, or the lucid media, or whatever you want to do, evolve.
Yeah. Well, let's talk later.
$150 an hour.
That was, the question I had was specifically pertinent to what Ryan was talking about is, you know, if you have a service-oriented business versus a product-oriented business, how do you go and channel your efforts, so that you're not taking all this time selling a product, because your product is much more hands-on event.
Right.
So, the times that we've dabbled in there and tried to do that stuff, it really, every single time we've gone down that path, it's really fallen to pieces if there's any kind of actual interaction or any kind of thing that opens up the doorway for people to asking us to do something for them online. And so the question that I have for you guys is, what do you do about that? I mean, how do you reach out to, outer space out there and at the same time, not make it interactive?
I don't know that anybody would suggest to not make it interactive.
No, we wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
It has to be two-way communications.
But what Ryan was getting at is that, say I do have 15 minutes of free time, that's being generous, right? So you have a question about your cat, and it takes me 5 minutes to go and look it up and another 5 minutes to just specifically respond to you. You're one person, but I have 50 of you guys online that are asking me a question or somehow involving in some kind of interaction. I don't have that kind of time, plus financially I don't have that kind of resources to go and donate. So the question is how, the question that I would have is pertinent, like I said, to what Ryan was getting is, how do you take a service-oriented business, right, that you really cannot afford the actual interaction or the blog time or the stuff that allows that intimacy that you're talking about, it just can't afford it. But at the same time, how do you go and reach into that world?
You go. One way to do is do it global. There's a plumber in Seattle that does a blog about toilets, and it became one of the leading sellers of Toto toilets globally by. This is true. And Google any brand, any model of Toto toilet, and this guy comes up. And what he did is he went from being a local guy and figured out by giving advice about which toilet flushes better and gives a more satisfying flush, and sell them globally.
But you don't have the time to do that, right?
Right, that's a product. We're not selling the actual product. Right?
I think there's two things that you can do, right? The first one is you were asking earlier about expectations. You can set expectations. As much as I would love to help everybody answer their specific veterinary questions on this blog, can't do it. The other thing that you could do is you could say, my veterinary time is worth $200 an hour, whatever it is, and say, I would be more than happy to answer your questions that fit in this little tiny box. And all you got to do is swipe your credit card and pay me $15, right? Like, there's two ideas on how you can manage. Number one, set the expectation that you can't answer specific questions about your pet on the blog, and that's why you don't do blog posts about dysentery or whatever it is, right? But you do, pet of the week type of stuff. So set expectations, or two, figure out a way to turn it into a revenue stream so that if you have to take an hour off of veterinary care, to answer 10 things, you're getting $15 per thing. That gives you $150 for that hour that you're taking off. Plus, it gives things that people can share with folks. Or I'll pick one question a week and I'll answer a question every Friday. There's three. Those free.
All right. Larry, sir, you will be last, and then we're going to wrap it, and you guys can go talk and drink and hang.
Okay. This is for a suggestion to Dan and Ron. We've been involved for over 10 years in search engine optimization, and that's a very important field for us. This generic search results is all about Google. So this will be why we don't buy advertising. But their model will change. Their model has to change to results-oriented advertising, pay-per-sale rather than pay-per-click. Now, I'm recommending the same thing to you as an approach in tough times. These are tough times. You want to place an ad in a newspaper, somebody's got to design it, produce it, pay the placement for it. It's a serious expense in either one of your papers. Have results-oriented deals with people. We'll give you a half page for $100, plus we'll take 10% of all the advertising, and let's figure out a way to track those sales. And I think you'll draw back a lot of advertisers like us who would be willing to take that kind of deal and invest the money to develop the ad, rather than just pay for the placement and then maybe do it another week, and then we'll run out of marketing money for the year. And,
No, your suggestion, back to your question, Larry, we do performance-oriented deals. We have done them. I've had a little bit harder time bringing my publishers around because on on our web business, we will do performance-oriented deals. We'll put up the ad, and if you sell the house, the realtor pays. If the hotel room sells, we get a cut. We do it with restaurants. We track them through phone calls. We've done phone auditing. We've done transaction auditing. And if anybody has a way to track it, you know, like if it's only blue cookies that are advertised in Metro Santa Cruz, you know, and you give us, you know, 50 cents a cookie, we might, who knows? We'll try it.
And the other key to that is also getting you, the advertiser, to make sure that you put an offer that people are interested in. You know, just to tell us that, you know, you because in some ways, yeah, we are taking risks, but at the same time, if you're, you know, we don't have the ultimate control over what you put in your ads. So if you want to do that kind of advertising, you have to be able to be willing to put out an offer there that is going to be interesting to people in that particular given
Sure,
week.
the deal is sort of
Yeah.
more like
We may
more
compromise.
nature of a partnership than it is a straightforward.
We may compromise. We might want our name on your cookies if you're getting branding in our paper. And the other thing we're doing is a lot of
If it
events.
sells.
What?
If it sells.
Yeah. The other thing we do is we do a lot of events. Mauricio Mejia's here tonight. He puts on a lot of our events and festivals that we do, particularly in Silicon Valley, like Music in the Park and other events. So we try and do co-branding and co-promotions and stuff as well.
Sir, last question, and then after this, I'm going to give each of our panelists 60 seconds in reverse order to say what they wish they could have said sometime in the course. Huh? Jack, 60 seconds to sort of wrap up and give us some party thoughts.
I own a restaurant here in downtown Santa Cruz, and first I want to say you've been incredibly informative. It's called Hula's. So by
I got a hula box.
so my
It's conversation happening, right?
here, my question is, you know, because I'm processing all this, and I'm wondering how do I ask or encourage my employees to use new media to help my business, like, you know, Facebook and Twitter and whatnot? What are the dangers of asking them? You know, should I ask them? Because we'll lose the message, and or should we just try to, you know, contain it ourselves?
Good questions. Just a quick observation.
'Cause we have, okay.
Imagine that you didn't own Hula's, but that you worked at Hula's.
Right.
And you came into this room and you said, I work at Hula's. Everybody would have just looked at you. But by virtue of the fact that you said, I own Hula's, the whole room went, hey, and I've got Hula bucks. And what happens is that you're kind of like a celebrity, right? The people who wait on your tables and the people who cook your food, they're not celebrities, right? They're employees. And there's something about being a business owner that carries a gravitas, because you are more tightly associated with the brand of your business than any of your employees could ever be. They could all go, you know, illegally review you on Yelp. They could all get on Twitter and talk about how awesome Hula's is and everything. But if you notice just the reaction that you got, right? It's because you own Hula's. You are that brand. And you're the personality that people look to and go, hey, wow, that's the Hula's guy. Right? They don't say that about your employees. So while your employees can do that, I think the thing that you've got that's of the most value to you is you getting out there and doing that, and you putting your picture on the website and saying, hi, I own Hula's, you know, and this is what we're doing this week. And everybody's going to go, wow, hey, cool. And when somebody leaves a comment on your site, send them a comment back. Right? Hey, thanks. We really appreciate, I got to apologize, I've never been to Hula's. Really appreciate you stopping by and having dinner with us, or, you know, something like that, so that you create that conversation, just like just happened in real life right here in this very room. You can replicate that.
Can I? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, so I actually think that there are a number of case studies out there, folks that they have employees twittering for their brand, Zappos in particular. So that conversation is, there are some companies that are doing it effectively. I want to echo one thing, and then I think I have a difference of opinion, but one is that your brand. I mean, your brand is absolutely the most important thing, and you are definitely doing a very good job of your brand. I just want to let you know. Because it's in the bike, on the street, it's everywhere. It's like you echo that brand really well. So if you've got a strong brand, that brand and that culture is being hopefully passed on to your employees, and they absolutely, I believe, can be voices for that brand and that culture, because that's what you're out there promoting. So it's really up to you as to how good of a job you can do is to instilling that culture, so that they can be voices for you as well. It is a slippery slope.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
Beware.
people drink at Hula's. I mean, it's like, their Mai Tais are really, your Mai Tais are just amazing. So, I mean, it's like, you know, what people would say and what are we gonna do about that? I mean, understand that if you're gonna go into that space, something's gonna happen that you're gonna have to do damage control on and be like, you know, my employee said this, but, you know, if all of a sudden on Twitter, there was a message that came out and said, hey, we're open for lunch today. You'd have some people coming. Yeah, I mean, it's like, so I mean, I think that there's an opportunity, especially in a local community, to get out there and be in conversation. And I would certainly encourage you to do that with your employees if you feel that you're a good culture carrier and that you're, you know, that they're instilling that culture. Alan?
I want to build on Margaret's comment.
Okay.
Because she said something really cool and really important and really present.
I'm sorry.
Something really terrible happened to Ryan Ayer in the last 48 hours. Has anyone seen what happened here? Some blogger, he's basically a nobody, just an online community member, discovered a problem with Ryan Air, so discount Irish airline. And he found a little problem in their ticket sales system. If you did things in a certain way, it would show him that his fare was $0. And so he wrote this big blog article up about how to get free flights on Ryan Air. Well, it turns out you couldn't really book the flight. It was just a display bug. And so the community's like, you loser, I can't fly for $0. It fails. And this would have just died on the vine, except a couple of employees at Ryan Air tore into him in his comments section. So I guess I have two sort of prongs to this. It made Ryan Air look appallingly bad. These employees unofficially acting as spokespersons for the corporation said some really nasty things to this guy. They were more appropriate as personal attacks. But they put the weight of the brand and the weight of the company behind the comments. And did a lot of goodwill damage in the community for the brand. So I really have to support your opinion there. There's a lot of power behind the executive staff and the owners showing up in the community, engaging the community with that positive message. They have a lot of experience with, it is your brand, so you have this own sense of ownership and you can protect it. I think, personal opinion only, that some caution is needed to empower your employees to represent your brand in the web space. And if you do that, you should empower them and some guidelines so that they know how to represent the brand. Because a few missteps can do an amazing amount of damage. This is managed to get picked up by BBC and CNN, and really it should have been a non-story.
Unintended consequences.
All right. You guys have all obviously enjoyed this, because are you on
I just wanted to
Yeah,
say two
sorry.
things about that and answer your question. Number one, Ryan is absolutely right. As the owner, you are the brand, and I would posit that many of you owners spend 25% of your time on financial matters. Am I right? More than? Who knows? Communications matters are as critical to the success of your business. And I'm talking about broadly communications, which includes marketing, how you tell your story, how you talk to customers, how you manage your employees. You as the owner have a responsibility to set aside a good 25% of your time. It's usually the requests I make of executives when I'm going to do work with them is, if you can't give me 25% of your time, it's not worth us working together, because you've got to be committed to communicating consistently and effectively, and you are the brand. And the second thing that a good PR program will always do is very first go and create employees as owners. And that's really when employees come at it that they own the brand themselves, then there will be good spokespeople for you, but not before. So until you create that sense of ownership, whether virtual or real, in your employees, then that's when they can become spokespeople for you.
Ron, 60 seconds to say whatever you want.
What do I want to say? Gosh, I've said a lot already. I've done a lot of talking, I think, and so, you know, I think the thing that I still say with any business, at least from my own personal experience, and it goes back, I think, actually, I'll just reiterate what I said before, is you know, you've got to have a good product, you have to have a good service, you have to really believe in what it is that you're doing, and you really have, once you have a plan in place, you've got to stick to it. You know, and the other thing I would say is use the media. You know, one of the things that is really frustrating for us in the media, on the business side of things, is that we'll go in to sit down and talk with businesses, that we know nothing about their business, but we know a lot about marketing their business. And sometimes we get into this situation where, you know, we want to find out about their business so that we can understand it, but they don't really want to hear what we have to say about how they might best position themselves. And so what I would say is, you know, the person whoever you're working with out there, ask them a lot of questions. Find out about them. Find out how they think. Be open to listen to what they have to say about the business that they know. And at the same time, be open about what you know so that you can really form a partnership and really work together. And certainly, then the last thing I would say is, you know, don't rely on one media. You know, multimedia is, you know, find ways of incorporating the medias. And again, be consistent. You know, don't show, you know, if you're throwing a message out in print, you know, make that message be, you know, connected to the dots with, if you're using something on the internet or doing banner ads or however you position yourself, be consistent across the board.
Sandy, 60 seconds on whatever you want to say.
3 things: you, who, and again. Know who you are. Be really, really clear about who you are. Be authentic. Be true. Make sure you know who you need to talk to, who you rely on for success. Say it again and again and again. The channel of communication is really irrelevant. New media, old media, your media, their media. It doesn't really matter. If you don't have those 3 things right, it doesn't matter where you talk.
Margaret, 61 seconds.
61 seconds. Brand is really important. Understand what your brand is, represent it everywhere you are, just basically echoing that. And essentially understand where you want to have a conversation with your customers, whether that's on the phone, in the person, in real life, on the web, in email. Understand where it is and manage that conversation. It should not be a public toilet, but it should be a public comment. Ask me more about that later.
I like these groups of 3, these triple plays. So I have 3 grenades to throw too. And the first is, I just can't believe anybody didn't bring up the most vicious of all media, Yelp. Where were you guys? Isn't that over here?
Is it vicious?
Okay, that's
Vicious?
what?
Are they vicious?
No, nobody's been yelped over here.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Second, where are we going for beer? Okay, I'll buy the
beer's
first.
not near me.
Well, there's plenty of beer over there. Drink that first.
Okay, because I was going to offer to buy the first dozen beers just to get something creative. We're thinking out of the box. We're ready to change. We're not keeping things the way they are in traditional media. So bring it on. I'm ready to listen, and I will act on the best idea I hear tonight.
Ryan, 27 seconds. I mean, 60 seconds.
You guys, as business owners and entrepreneurs, are fascinating people. You have specialties and ideas that nobody else has, and that's why you run your business and somebody else doesn't. And the whole concept of media is about telling a story. And everybody in this room who has started a business, or who runs a business, or has been to a business, has a story to tell. And people talk about the mundanities of Twitter and all that business, but what really makes each and every single one of us fascinating people, what makes our stories, is the stitching together of all of the little independent things that happen throughout the course of our days, and our observations and our thoughts and our ideas and all of these things. And so you don't need a big story to get big press. What you need is, you need an idea, you need a thought, and you need a channel. And one of the things that new media does for every single person here is it gives you that channel to express whatever those thoughts and ideas are.
All right. Hey, thank you guys for coming. Thank them for coming.